Leave me. The ship will go again. You'll die here. Probably. The crash site was not on any map Joran Falk had been issued, which was consistent with a broader pattern of how his week had been going. He had been 3 days into a solo reconnaissance sweep of the Thra jungle corridor, a region of the planet Skeeth that the coalition survey teams had classified as uninhabited, ecologically complex, and not particularly dangerous as long as you respected the weather systems, which generated electrical storms of significant violence with approximately 40 minutes of warning. The survey teams had not classified it as the kind of place where alien military vessels came down at speed through the canopy and buried themselves in the undergrowth 60 meters from your camp position. Joran had been awake when it happened. He was frequently awake at hours when sleep would have been the sensible choice, a habit his unit commander described as productive insomnia, and his bunkmates described using less clinical language. The sound of the impact traveled through the jungle in a way that his training processed before the rest of him caught up. He was already moving toward it with his field kit before he had consciously decided to go. The vessel was Dravani military configuration. He recognized the hull geometry from the coalition identification briefings. A scout-class interceptor, fast and lightly armored, the kind of ship designed to be somewhere briefly and leave quickly. This one had not left quickly. It had come down through the canopy at an angle that suggested either catastrophic systems failure or that something had hit it first, and the way the port side was crumpled inward suggested the second option. He found the survivor on the third pass around the wreckage through a gap in the hull where the impact had folded the plating back. A window of approximately 40 centimeters, enough to see through, not enough to extract someone easily. She was conscious, which he had not expected. She was also clearly not going to be conscious for much longer, which he had expected. The blue bioluminescent markings along her neck and shoulders that he recognized from the Dravani biological briefings were flickering irregularly, which the briefings had described as a physiological stress indicator. Her flight suit was torn at the left side where the impact had caught her, and the dark fluid visible there was enough to confirm that the urgency was not hypothetical. "Leave me," she said in coalition standard that was slightly blurred at the edges but entirely comprehensible. "The ship will go again. You'll die here." Joran looked at the ship. The secondary power cells in the port section were producing a sound that matched the briefing description of systems under terminal stress. She was not wrong about the risk. The ship probably had somewhere between 3 and 8 minutes before the remaining power discharged in a way that would be very bad for anyone nearby. He reached in anyway. "Stop," she said, with the fierce precision of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I gave you an order." "You're Dravani military," Joran said, working his hands around a piece of buckled plating. "I'm Coalition Ground Corps. Your orders don't actually apply to me." "Then I am asking." "Noted," he said. "Now hold still." What followed was 4 minutes of the most focused physical work Joran had done in a field situation, and he had done considerable field work in conditions that had ranged from difficult to the specific category his unit called character building. The gap in the plating was not cooperative. The jungle floor was not stable. She was not helping, both because she was fading and because she had apparently decided that if she was going to be rescued against her clearly stated wishes, she was going to make it at least moderately inconvenient. Though he suspected the second reason was cover for the first. He got her out with approximately 90 seconds to spare before the port power cells discharged in a bloom of orange and gold that lit the jungle canopy and sent a family of something large and previously unbothered crashing away through the undergrowth. He was already 40 meters from the wreckage with her over his shoulder when it went. The pressure wave moved his hair. He carried her to his camp, which was a specific configuration of equipment and shelter that his unit called a ghost position, low profile, thermally masked, entirely invisible from the air unless you were standing on top of it. He settled her on the emergency thermal mat, ran the field scanner over her injuries with the focused competence of someone with 3 years of combat medic cross-training, and began working. She was unconscious by then, which was in some ways easier and in some ways not, because the part of his attention that had been managing the argument was now free to notice how badly she was actually hurt and allocate appropriate concern to it. 3 hours of careful field medicine. The left side injury was the primary problem. Internal bruising, 2 cracked ribs, and a laceration that the scanner flagged as requiring pressure management for the next 48 hours. Nothing that would kill her, given the next 48 hours, went correctly. Everything that would have killed her in the wreckage, given 3 more hours. She woke near dawn to the smell of something cooking on the field heater. For a long, disoriented moment, she simply looked at the canvas of the ghost position above her, processing the information that she was alive, that she was warm, and that something somewhere nearby smelled like food in a way that her body found immediately and inexplicably compelling, despite the considerable protest from her ribs. She turned her head. Joran Falk was sitting cross-legged 2 meters away at the field heater with a concentrated ration pack and what appeared to be several things from the jungle he had added to it, stirring something in the heater container with the focused attention of a man who had decided to do a thing correctly or not at all. "You're awake," he said without looking up from the heater. "Don't sit up yet." 2 cracked ribs. "You'll know about it." She tested this information by attempting to sit up, confirmed it immediately, and settled back with an expression that contained equal parts pain and the specific displeasure of someone whose instinct to argue had just been preempted by being corrected. "You ignored my order," she said. "I did," Joran agreed, consistently all the way to the end. "The food's almost ready." A silence occupied by the jungle waking up outside the ghost position. Distant calls, the movement of air through the canopy, the ordinary morning business of a world entirely indifferent to the previous night's events. "Why?" she said, not accusatory, genuinely asking, in the specific way of someone trying to understand a variable their model didn't account for. Joran looked up from the heater. His hazel eyes in the early light held the specific calm of someone who had considered a question like this before and arrived at an answer that didn't require defending. "Because you were there and I could," he said. "That's the whole thing. There's no more complicated version." She looked at him for a long moment. The Dravani military officer, the woman who had told him to leave, who had asked, who had tried to make the extraction inconvenient as a point of pride, and something moved through her expression that the Dravani military had no formal category for because it was not a battlefield response. "Veza Thren," she said, her name offered across the morning, quiet like something she was choosing to give rather than having it extracted. "Joran Falk," he said, "Coalition Ground Corps Corporal." He lifted the heater container. "Dinner is technically breakfast given the hour, but the distinction feels unimportant." Veza, who had commanded a Dravani scout interceptor and had told a human soldier to leave her to die in a burning crash site and had been entirely ignored on both counts, accepted the food container with her good hand. She tasted it. "This is acceptable," she said, with the measured quality of someone accustomed to giving nothing away. "High praise," Joran said, with the specific warmth of someone who knew exactly what acceptable meant when someone said it like that. Outside, the jungle moved and breathed around the ghost position, entirely unbothered. Inside, the morning continued warm and ordinary, and very quietly, the beginning of something that neither of them had a word for yet, but that both of them, in their different ways, recognized. Joran reached for his own meal, tasted it, frowned slightly, and added a pinch of dried herbs from a small cloth packet. Veza watched him. "What's wrong with it?" "Nothing," he said. "It can just be better." She looked down at her own container, took another careful bite, then held it back toward him. "Then make mine better, too." Joran smiled, took the container without comment, and reached for the herbs. Outside, the jungle continued exactly as it had before. Inside the ghost position, 2 soldiers who had met in the middle of a burning crash site quietly shared,